XF-73 is past all previous stages, not just past them, but top of the class. It's passed them with flying colours. So we've got this rich evidence that we've generated both in the laboratory and in the clinic that says this drug works, it works quickly, and it works very effectively against drug-resistant bacteria.
Very welcome back inside our proactive newsroom, and joining me now is Dr. Ilian Iliev. He is the CEO of EMV Capital. Ilian, good to see you again. How are you?
Steve, I'm very good, and good to see you again.
Good stuff. And also joining a conversation is the executive chairman of AMR Bio, Nigel Brooksby. And Nigel, good to see you as well.
Thank you, Steve. Great to meet you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Let's start the conversation with you, Ilian. You've described AMR Bio as a great example of EMV Capital's venture build model. Maybe you can sort of talk us through what's gone into sort of getting the business to this particular stage.
Thanks, Steve. Well, as your viewers might know, EMV Capital has a differentiated capability around the venture build platform, which is where we identify companies with excellent IP, technology, proven science, which for one or another reason requires some help for a restart or a redirection of the business for them to achieve their true commercial and social potential. We have several of those companies, both in life sciences and deep tech. And we were very excited to welcome AMR Bio to our platform last year. Now, in terms of AMR itself, we are, of course, aware of the great potential and great challenge societally in terms of the declining effectiveness of antibiotics and the challenge around antimicrobial resistance, both across medicines in developed and developing countries. So when we saw the previous Destiny Pharma first achieve some really excellent results in their phase 2 trials, but then subsequently being unable to proceed, it was something of interest. At that point, Nigel, with whom we work quite closely, helped us understand the opportunity, given his immense experience in the life sciences and pharma space. And we put together a small team and restarted it. We've done it in a very lean manner. Part of our thesis is driving such opportunities in a capital efficient manner, being cautious with our investors' money until we understand the opportunity and drive it to the next stage. It's been a very fast 9 months since AMR Bio was formed and took over the XF-73 assets from Destiny Pharma. But as Nigel will tell you shortly, the company has made some really impressive results and progress on so far minimal resources.
You obviously had some confidence in XF-73, and it was worth backing, and thought it was the right opportunity for the companies you mentioned and building around it. Tell me what sort of gave you that confidence in this particular one.
Look, it's a very much a common sense approach. Our venture build program looks at companies where the science is strong, the IP is strong, the markets are strong, and with a different thinking around execution, we can make a difference. In the case of XF-73, they had gone through a successful phase 2B clinical trial with really good results. We could really relate to the market opportunity around surgical site infections, as well as wound care. And finally, we happened to have with Nigel the right team that could take this forward.
Yeah. Well, let's bring Nigel in. He's been waiting patiently to get a word in on this one for sure. And antimicrobial resistance, Nigel, I want to start there because, a lot of people have been talking about it for many, many years. So what is it about XF-73 that makes you believe it really could be something special where antibiotics have sort of becoming a little less effective, as we heard from Ilian?
Yeah, well, a great question. I mean, for sure, they're becoming very much less effective. The unique, although there will be drugs that come along and maybe drugs from AMR Bio that join them, that XF-73 kills bacteria in seconds, absolutely seconds, Steve, rather than hours. And it also targets the bacterial membrane. And the membrane is the structure that allows the bacteria to become resistant. So it's super quick and it's super efficient at killing superbugs. So you've got that dual action, the combination of speed and bacterial membrane activity, which makes a real difference when it comes to tackling bacterial resistance. And antimicrobials just don't work when a bacteria becomes resistant. I mean, it's quite interesting for me, who's been in the industry several years, to see how we ended up in this mess. I mean, the birth of modern antibiotics really came around in the 20s, and then in World War II, penicillin saved millions of lives. Then in the 1960s and 70s, we had a golden age of antibiotics. That's when I joined the industry as a salesman. Every sales rep was selling an antibiotic. I was selling Septrin and cotrimoxazole, but every drug rep was selling an antibiotic. But that golden age didn't last too long, because by the 70s already the bacteria were responding, and we entered this huge rise of resistance. And that's exactly the situation we're in now. I mean, it's a stark fact, but it's one that I trot out on a regular basis, Steve. By 2050, drug-resistant bacteria will kill more people than cancer today.
Wow. Sobering thought for sure. So I when I was researching this and hearing more about XF-73, I've heard you talk about it being phase 3 ready. So what exactly does that mean? And what sort of things should people be looking out for in the next little while?
I mean, our industry, the same as many industries, is full of jargon. And a lot of the jargon comes from the FDA in the States, because they've got this very rigorous standard. Quite rightly, that every drug has to go through with various phases, and each phase of drug development builds on the results from the last one. So we're phase 3 ready. That's the last and final phase. XF-73 has passed all previous stages, not just passed them, but top of the class. It's passed them with flying colours. So we've got this rich evidence that we've generated both in the laboratory and in the clinic that says this drug works. It works quickly, and it works very effectively against drug-resistant bacteria. We're now in a phase where we're talking to the FDA on the final stage, which is the design of that clinical trial, which will bring together all of that evidence that confirms that the drug is effective, and as importantly, of course, it is safe.
Yeah. Obviously, when that happens, and if things go the way you'd like them to go, you obviously start thinking now about route to market. So what does that look like to you, and where do you see the biggest opportunities for this? You mentioned the US FDA, so I'd imagine the US is a big market, as others as well.
The US is within the pharmaceutical industry, within the drug industry. Clearly, the US is still a very important market, as is the whole of North America and Europe combined, but increasingly we've got other markets. So we tend to look, as you know, at the global market. Our first entry into this huge unmet need will be surgical site infections. So that's those operations when a patient goes into hospital, which is to prevent them getting an infection post-operatively. And our phase 2b study showed remarkable results, 99, almost 100% success in dampening down, getting rid of any infection, any pool of infection, so that in very serious surgery, this was heart surgery, there was no infection at all in the group that were administered XF-73. So going forward, it's getting riskier these days, Steve, to actually have an operation in hospital because of the risk of infection and the risk that infection might be resistant to the antibiotics. So our first entry into the market will be these surgical site of infections, where, would you believe, all over the world, the standard of care was a drug that was developed before most surgeons were born. It's a very old drug which encounters resistance problems. So we think this is an obvious area to go into, because we can make an immediate improvement very, very quickly. After that, there'll be other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Ilian, let's bring you back in to sort of wrap things up here and talk to me a little bit about where you see this going and moving forward, and the type of value you think it creates for the company.
Sure. So I think, as Nigel identified, there is multiple ways of adding commercial value to the business itself, and that in turn translates into different ways of getting shareholder return from the company, whether it is through a potential acquisition in the future, or an IPO, or a collaboration with Big Pharma that could result in some money back to shareholders. EMV Capital PLC holds 30% of this business at the moment on a fully diluted business basis, and we have further exposure to carried interest with the other investors that have gone in. So even if you think of future investments that will dilute our stake right now is so significant that we can certainly be in a good position to get good investment return for PLC in case of future success.
Well, gentlemen, it's going to be very interesting over the next few months and beyond that as well. And we'll make sure we continue to follow the story as it develops. So, Nigel, thank you very much. Good to see you.
And thank you, Steve. Thank you for the conversation. It's been great.
Yeah, there's Nigel Brooksby, the executive chairman of AMR Bio. And as always, Ilian, nice to see you as well.
Thank you, Steve. Good to see you.
Yeah, Dr. Ilian Iliev, the CEO of EMV Capital.